And if people come in, then we'll just let them in as they come.
Okay, hi everybody. My name is Robert Miller, and I am the moderator for this meeting today. I am a volunteer member of the Troy Solid Waste Advisory Board, and we essentially work for or with Renee on that project. I am also the note taker, so if you see me turn my head to the left like that, I'm not ignoring you, I'm taking notes. The process today is if you go to the bottom of the Zoom screen, you will see a yellow icon with a raised hand on it. It looks like this. If you click that, I will see your hand raised. And when you are the next person in line, I will unmute you from my perspective. You still have to make sure that you are unmuted yourself. And then I will tell you it's your turn to speak and ask questions. We can start now, and Renee is going to give some information on solid waste in Troy and pay as you throw. Okay, Renee.
Well, hi all. I will also introduce Susan Jadlos, who is also a member of the Solid Waste Advisory Board, also a volunteer, who has also joined on this call as well. So welcome everybody, and thanks for coming to today's community meeting. What I'll do is give an overview of goings on, the things that have happened in 2020, what's coming up for 2021 and potentially 2022, and then we'll go into the question and answer session. So, please feel free, if you're able, to hold your questions until the end. And meanwhile, I'll do my best to update you on what we've got going on. What I tend to do is the good, the bad, and the ugly, and I start with the ugly first, because that way I'm not trying to pull the wool over your eyes, fleece you, or otherwise not give you information. There's some things that are ugly that we're very aware of and working hard on, some things that are bad that we're working to improve, and then the things that are good we'll save till last. That way you have something to look forward to. So ugly, we know that the age of our trucks in some cases is incredibly old. We are working really hard to replace the trucks as we're able. We were not able to replace any in 2020 because of the coronavirus, and we are actively working to replace 2 more trucks in 2022. As well, we are aware that a lot of the alleys, despite being adopted by a lot of neighborhoods, still need a lot of work. Having a 3rd litter patrol coming on board, litter patrol officer, coming on board in the next few months will help to ensure that a lot of those matters are addressed, as well as the fact that we've got a lot more neighborhoods that are starting to more actively participate in ongoing cleanups. Same with the dumping that has been going on. We have had several dumpers that have been caught and significant fees assessed against them by our litter patrol officers. So another matter that I kind of feel goes someplace between the bad and the ugly is the need for more street cans. We are actively working with 2 neighborhoods now to redeploy some of our cement street cans. They were pulled because they needed parts and pieces replaced, and we're actively working with those 2 neighborhoods to put them back into neighborhoods, both in North Central and in South Troy. The bad, we were looking to have the Alamo, the Troy Resource Management Facility, opened early last spring. And again, because of coronavirus, that was on pause. We did recently open April 15th and are currently open for residents to come in and drop off branches, brush, and leaves on Thursdays from 9 a.m. to 1 p.m. and to pick up mulch and pallets as available. We are hoping to expand that service, but right now, because of personnel restrictions, it's only on the Thursdays. But again, we're hoping to expand that first into having a weekend day available and then having additional weekdays. As well, during 2020, we were hoping for 2021 to have put in the budget a pilot for compost in collaboration with some other folks, but that was not accepted as part of the budget. So we'll repropose that again for 2022. But those are the things that are the bad that we're still strongly working on. As for the good, we had over 54, I believe, Earth Day events, and some of them, we've got neighborhoods that are continuing to do very extended spring cleanups. We have household hazardous waste in Troy coming up on June 26th. We partner with East Greenbush and Town of Bethlehem. We had an event that Troy participated in Bethlehem mid-April, and then we'll have one in East Greenbush in August. But meanwhile, we've got one in Troy in June and one in Troy in October, and residents can register to go to any of those four, well, the three remaining events. We have the electronics shredding and tire event coming up this coming weekend. There are a few slots left for that. Registration will close for that on Wednesday. The same day, you can also do pickup of the composters or rain barrels if you've ordered them. That site will also be live until Wednesday. The spring cleanups will still be going on until May 15th, at which point they will be completed and we will still be doing regular pickup of yard and lawn materials on the regular trash pickup day. Recollect is a new platform online that we will be utilizing, and really looking forward to having that roll out. It is what I would refer to as an electronic file cabinet or a recyclopedia, so that people know how to dispose of materials, how to recycle them, how to repurpose them, where those things go. So we're very much looking forward to having that go live. And there will be educational materials and curricula available over time. There are a few pieces of that sort of material that will be posted when the site goes live, but over time we're going to be building up on that. Again, the composter and rain barrel sale, this is our second annual, and those will be picked up this Saturday, as well as having the electronics event going on. Other educational things that we've been working on, both with community as the solid waste board and in-house, is expanding the size of the recycling bins that we have. So now, rather than just having 14-gallon bins, we have 16, and we have a 22, which is new. And those can be picked up at the City Hall. They can be picked up at our Department of Public Works, or when we start having staffing available again, they can be dropped off at your home. So depending on how quickly you need them, we can arrange to make sure you get them. On the bins, there are also informational bin stickers, educational stickers that advise as to what can go in the bin. So that is also new for this year, as well as prevent food waste magnets. And those are really helpful to refer to how to prevent things going into your garbage bin before you start separating materials, tells you where they go. We provided 50 bags each to 13 pantries in the city, utilizing funds provided back to the city by New York State. And what that was from, the bag 5-cent charge that we were requiring from retailers, a portion of that came back to the city. And although the city wanted to give it back to retailers, New York State said unconditionally that that's not allowed, and that we needed to be buying reusable bags for distribution. So we felt that by providing them to pantries, that would enable folks that may not have the opportunity or the capability financially to be purchasing bags to obtain them when they go to the pantry to pick up their foods. So we work with 13 pantries, and we will continue to do that if we receive additional rebate funds from New York State. Pay as you throw, which was proposed last year, is being for the 2020 budget year, will be reproposed back to council. Of course, it's up to them whether they do approve it, but we're reconfiguring it. So it's very specific to what the needs of Troy are. And part of the reason to have these community meetings is so that we are able to take any information and input that residents have as we're redesigning it into consideration, so that we make sure that we've hit all of the touch points that are important to the residents. The proactive community involvement aspect of it, I believe, will enable us to build the best program possible. And there are various hybrid options that we'll be looking into. So again, the input that you provide will help us to build that best option for us. Something that we're hoping to do this summer, which will give us additional information, is to do physical trash audits. And so what that looks like is actually having some students that have expressed interest in it from some of our colleges here in actually emptying trash cans onto a tarp and sorting it out into how those materials should be separated and where they actually should go. There are some excellent examples of videos, YouTube videos that show Albany students doing that back in 2013 is probably my favorite video showing that sort of thing. And what it did was explained to the public that a garbage can that was full of 18 pounds of garbage ultimately in the end should have only had 3 pounds of garbage in it. And so as we are considering moving toward pay as you throw, it really explains what belongs where and why it shouldn't go in the trash and how to minimize the amount of materials that are going into the trash. So pretty much that's it for an overview. I always prefer to have longer for residents to be able to ask questions. And as you do ask questions, what I'd ask you to consider is what your why is. And what that means is most people, the questions that they ask and the decisions that they make are based on either the environment, the economy, or community. So as you pose your questions, maybe think about what the why is for you and how we can best answer that why. So I'll turn the floor over to Bob so that he can call on you, and I'm happy to answer any questions. Thanks.
Okay, I'll remind everybody, if you click the raised hand icon at the bottom of the Zoom screen, I will see that and I can unmute you. And right now we have 0 hands raised, waiting for the first question. Okay, Pat, I see you've raised your hand. I have unmuted you. You can now talk.
My question is, has it been considered when the pay-as-you-throw the bags, you're adding more bags into the dump, the plastic bags, because people still buy the bags to put into the other bag? Because I grew up in a city that did the pay-as-you-throw, and I ended up putting more plastic bags into the city bag to keep the feral animals from destroying the bag and having garbage all over the streets. And it cost me more money out of pocket to try and prevent the animals from destroying the bags. And the bags just ripped. So we had more plastic going into the landfill than was before.
That's a very fair question, Pat. So there's a couple of approaches that we'll proactively take with that. So the goal is to minimize the amount of plastic bags going into the landfill. And in more than one way, the secondary goal is to diminish the number of bags that you're using. So the bags that we're using, first of all, have primarily recycled content in them. So that helps to one extent. But the rest of the idea is to right size the bags so that you're not putting bags inside of bags. And so as we are working on the pricing structure for it, the goal is, if you're a 1 or 2 person household and there are smaller bags available, that you may opt to use those smaller bags so that you're not having to put a bag inside of a bag. So, that's again, a very reasonable question. The secondary matter that we are working on, again, with having additional litter patrol officers, is that all cans should have a proper lid on them and be closed. That is part of the city ordinances. And it's been difficult to enforce that in the past because there weren't specific systems established for that. Now, as our litter patrol officers have been on board in both cases for just over a year and will be bringing on a third, it's going to be easier for us to start not necessarily violating right off the bat and providing a fee, but providing a reminder and an oops sticker or a reminder tag before a violation is issued. And so we're working on the specifics of that now. And there's additional input like yours that will definitely need to be considered and that we'll want to have continued discussions on over time. Does that answer your question?
Sure.
Thank you. I appreciate the input.
Okay, thank you, Pat. I've muted you. Alex, you are now unmuted and you can speak.
Can you hear me?
Yes.
Okay. First, I need I'm a landlord, plus I have a property.
So I completely need to understand the pay as you go. Are you gonna be handing out bags for or everybody's gotta buy bags? The tenant's gotta buy bags, et cetera, et cetera. And this goes, Pat just raised a question, well, you just raised a question when with answering Pat with the whole container lid thing. I spend 70, 80 bucks on garbage cans, each garbage can. The lids, along with the garbage cans, get thrown all over the place, all over the property when they are emptied by our lovely sanitation workers, where the lids come up missing, if not the cans. So it's kind of hard to be responsible, especially as a landlord, for the lids.
Okay, so do you want me to start answering the first question first
Yeah,
or the second question first?
Explain the pay as you go. I mean, because I know the past
Sure.
year we implement it, you know, people throw out this, throw out that. And personally, as a landlord, I've set it up where my tenants, if they throw anything big out, a couch, anything like that, they call me, I put it in my truck, I take it to landfill because it's collected in my truck. It's a lot cheaper than paying $50 for a area rug. It's a lot cheaper to pay 40, 50 bucks at the landfill than $50 for one area rug.
Correct. So that piece of it, we'll start out with that piece of it, which is dependent on the size of the property is going to be dependent on who's responsible for the bags. We haven't gotten council approval on it yet, and this all has to go to council before we roll out any programs. But dependent on the size of the property and dependent on how the hybrid program is set up is going to depend on who is responsible for the bags. So ultimately, what I would like the goal to be is to have a certain number of bags provided and a lower fee, or have a higher fee that includes bags, so that it creates an opportunity for people to do the right thing without it costing them more to do the right thing. So if that makes sense, that's the goal with the pay as you throw. But in terms of the landlord piece of it, that is where tenants like yours that have an active landlord, a proactive landlord, are more likely to fulfill and kind of stand by what the ordinances are. There are a good number of absentee landlords that aren't necessarily endorsing good or positive behavior in their tenants. And so it puts the responsibility back on those landlords in a way that we haven't been able to enforce in the past. My feeling is that a landlord that's very involved like you are, you're more likely to post signs or tell them to contact me for additional information or refer them to the website. So the goal is to do outreach and education instead of have punitive fees and charges expended to people. Does that answer that question?
I don't know. I mean, I'll say it. I don't know how I can't see people on here. I've already got one house where, since this whole thing has come in play, I have people from Lord knows where in the neighborhood dumping stuff in front of the house that is not my tenants, so they don't get charged, like bed frames, bags. Like I've had to call the cops over at Washington Street near St. Mary's Place. I've had to call the cops repeatedly because of people just dumping stuff on on the side of the house. You have a situation right now where landlords, luckily I have tenants paying their rent. Landlords not getting rent money and still getting charged for everything. I'm at the breaking point of where the idea of leaving all my properties and walking away from this state is at the point, as a tipping point as it is, because of all that. So for another thing to be responsible for as a landlord, I mean, most of my houses are only 2-family. It's hard enough. I mean, yes, they'll call me for big stuff, but to tell them to make sure you get it in the, squish it down. Don't put, after Christmas, don't put all that Christmas stuff like in bags on the side of the can. I mean, I go over every week and check check stuff. But I mean, it's just, it's outrageous. You know, to try to keep, you know, and then I drive around the city and see, like you said, litter everywhere. Atrocious amounts. You know,
So
it's just-
Alex, I hear what you're saying, and we are definitely trying to improve upon that. So I go back to what you were saying about calling the police, which is of course the one of the lines of defense. Have you also reached out to the litter patrol officer in your area? Because if you have not, I'm happy to also provide that information. And as we have a third litter patrol officer, the zones are going to be made smaller and easier to manage. And so that will also affect the amount of trash that we're seeing around as they are able to be more proactive. Do you have that information for your litter
you know
patrol
what?
officer?
It's funny, in the past month, I've called the, down the Department of Public Works about this and called the police, and nobody ever even mentioned we have a litter patrol.
Yes. So if you email me, I'll
Give
give,
you the number right now if you want.
so if you email me, I'm going to put my email right now into the chat box. So if you email me, I'll make sure to give your address or the addresses for your properties to the litter patrol officer. And I'll also give you their phone number and email address. That is your first line of defense. And that can be more immediate than reaching out to any of the other departments. And we're also hoping that as the community police folks are brought on board, that there'll be a secondary communication system back into the neighborhoods. So we're trying to create a more integrated loop of communication. So that, does that answer the questions that you asked for the preliminary pass on it?
Well, I'm gonna
For
go back.
that part?
I don't mean to be a pain. I mean, but it's a serious thing.
I
So
agree
for-
but I didn't answer your second question. So did that primarily answer the first one?
Yes.
Okay, so the second question about the trash cans. Again, if you include that in the email, I will speak directly to the sanitation supervisor. My colleague Tom is a fantastic supervisor and will want to know where this is still happening. He has really diminished the number of problems that we were having with cans, with lids, with recycling bins and such. And so he will proactively speak to the driver and the laborers on that route if it is still problematic. So we do take that seriously. And if you include that in the email, I will speak directly to Tom about that and have him communicate with you as well.
I mean, because I've had my home house on Second Ave, when I first moved in here, I actually had to call down there and like tell them, like I could hear it bounce off the building, you know what I mean?
Yep.
But that was like 10, 12 years ago.
Right. And so our goal is to make it so that that doesn't happen ever. We do realize that on occasion it's still happening. We have changed and improved the policies and the expectations of the workforce. But again, if it is still happening, that's definitely something Tom would want to know about. So please definitely put that in the email as well.
Because trash cans aren't, people think they're not cheap, you know? And with a windstorm, a
Yep.
couple months ago, I lost like every trash can, you know, in almost every house, you know? Because they're
And
not.
so
tied.
Tom has actually had that conversation with the employees that's part of, that's how they need to consider that those trash cans help pay for their salary. And so he really has reversed the thought process with a number of employees, and he's continuing to push out that information that, that's their lifeblood. And so it is changing the culture in terms of the management and handling of them. But if it's still slow on the uptake and there are drivers or laborers that are still doing that, again, let me know, send that in the email, what the addresses are, and I will share that information with him as well as the litter patrol office.
Okay, I want to go back to the question. I'm glad I even logged on. As far as these new bags, that's a
Yes.
proposal that's got to be approved.
Correct.
Now, for a two-family household or two-family unit, does it look like the tenant would be responsible? And if so, how would that go about them picking them up, getting charged, all that?
So that part of it hasn't been established yet. What I will say is that the municipalities, of which there are 8,000 across the US and then lots and lots more around the world, they tend to work with retailers directly, any of the vendors. And so any corner store, bodega, grocery store, really any retailer in the city works directly with those companies, and that's where the tenants would purchase them. So it's not changing if it is the tenants and if it's not the landlords. As well, if it's the landlords, it's with a retailer you're going to anyway. It's not going to someplace different or adding an extra step. But again, that is the part where we are working on numbers and seeing what's best for us as a city. And I really want to emphasize the us as a city part of it, because part of the reason that it didn't succeed with council last year is because we were looking at models that lots of other cities use, and we're not lots of other cities. We are unique. And so looking at this specific to Troy is our goal in terms of how to best move it forward.
And if tenants didn't go along with this, that would be grounds for their termination of rental agreement?
Now that is where we have been advised by other corporation councils that we can't intervene with that. What I will say, because this part of it has nothing to do with my work personally, my husband and I are commercial landlords, and we have told our tenants in our building, and we are residential landlords as well, that the expectation is if we receive a violation or fine, that is going to be passed along to them, because it's easy enough to identify who did or didn't put something someplace. And so personally, what I would do is to set the expectation to have a lease addendum, but we cannot as a city provide those documents to you.
Oh, I know.
But by putting up signage and including it in an addendum and including it in future leases, that is the recommendation that we've gotten from other municipalities, some of which have had pay-as-you-throw implemented for up to 30 years. So that's the recommendations that we've received. It's just that we cannot provide that documentation for you as a city.
Oh, I've already told them, like, they throw out something like a chair or something without calling me first, they're gonna get fined, they're gonna get charged for that.
So really, Alex, the goal is to make sure that our landlords in general are doing what you're doing, which is setting up an expectation and setting up a process. And with that happening, the program has a great deal of likelihood of succeeding to the extent that we anticipate that it can.
Okay, and I have another question, unless somebody else got their hand up, I have another question.
Actually, Alex, there are other questions that
Oh.
other folks have. So I believe that we'll have time at the
With
end of the
Rico?
call. So can I circle back to you after we answer Pam's questions? And then if I'm not able to answer all your questions on the call, I'm happy to also have a phone call with you as well. Would that be acceptable?
Yes, can you put your email in chat?
I just
Or-
did. Yep.
I
And
don't
so
see it.
hopefully I'll be able to answer the questions during this
Says
session, but if
chats.
not, then we'll do that.
It says chat's disabled.
Oh, so you're not able to see chats that I put in?
No, they're probably just between you and,
Oh, okay. So it is Renee, RENEE .Panetta, PANETTA @troyny.gov.
at Troy.
ny.gov.
Okay. Troy.
But again, good likelihood that I'll be able to answer it in the next half hour. So let me circle on to Pam and then we'll come back.
Thank you.
Thank you, Alex.
Okay, I've muted Alex and unmuted. Okay, I've unmuted Pam. So Pam, you can go ahead and talk now.
Good morning, Renee. I think
Hello.
in a previous presentation, you had mentioned something about fabric disposal, and I didn't make a note at the time. And since then, I have come up with some things that are not really suitable to pass on for donation. Could you refresh my memory as to what to do with those?
Absolutely. So first I'll put in a PSA for the upcoming platform that we're going to be using, which is Recollect. And what it does is it creates an encyclopedia essentially for any types of materials. And it has what are called depots, drop-off locations. And so all sites that accept whatever type of material or electronics or whatever, everything, every location that will accept it will be listed in there. And so that will be a backup system so that people are able to see that as well. On the website now, it does show the 4 locations that we do have, which are they're blue bins. One at Fire Station 1, one at Fire Station 3, one at Fire Station 5, and then a 4th one down by the previously known as Alamo, that's now Troy Resource Management Facility, right across from the corrections, Rensselaer County Corrections Facility. So those are the 4 existing locations, and we are hoping to add on others. Those bins will take materials that are acceptable for donation or those that are not. So what they take is what's called soft goods, and despite the fact of the name is soft goods, it's anything that's a textile, so shoes, blankets, belts, pocketbooks, and they can be usable or non-usable condition. If they are non-usable, they will be shredded and used as animal bedding or insulation. And those are serviced very regularly by the vendor we work with.
Okay, good. Thank you.
You are most welcome. Thank you.
Okay, Pam, I've unmuted you, or muted you rather. And the only other hand still raised is Alex's. Do you want to continue with Alex now?
Absolutely. Are there any other hands that need to be raised? Any other attendees that have questions before I move back to Alex's questions?
Okay, Catherine, I have unmuted you. You are apparently muted on your end, Catherine.
Can you hear me now?
We
Yes.
can.
Okay, great. Thank you. I'm sorry I joined a little late, but can you provide a little more info about the bag sizes that you had mentioned? That was about the time I joined.
So the goal of the bag sizes, we are hoping and planning, pending the approval of council, of having 3 sizes, a 7-gallon, a 15-gallon, and a 30-gallon. So those would be the 3 sizes, and depending on your household size and the number of units that you have would depend on how many bags you would need to use. So it really is dependent on both the number of folks and the amount of diversion, which is removing from the waste stream that you're doing, which is why we're hoping to have, long before the implementation of any plan that we select, the software platform up. Excuse me.
Bless you.
Thank you.
Okay, yeah,
Okay.
no, I last time before the pandemic, when I was in the office, I asked about different size containers because I came from a state and city where we were able to do that, and I have a small household, so you know, usually I only have like 1 HEB bag worth of garbage, and the rest is all recycles. So
Excellent. Then a program like this you will find very favorable as it's implemented. So we are very much hoping for council approval on it so that we can move in that direction of diversion.
okay, thank you. And then another quick question, if I may.
Sure.
I noticed in walking in my neighborhood that there seem to be some maybe new recycling containers, and they seem to be different sizes. And so I wondered if that's part of this rollout or if maybe
Yes.
they needed to be replaced.
Yes, so thank you for noticing them. We've been hard at work on that. So the 14-gallon was the size that the city originally utilized, and we upgraded the smaller bins to a 16-gallon, and then we added on a larger bin, which is 22 gallons, and you can receive those by coming to the city hall, by stopping at DPW, or when we have more personnel available, having our DPW drop it at your home. So any of those 3 outlets, you're more than welcome to utilize.
Okay, but right now I have multiple, you know, regular size recycle containers. I can continue using those.
Absolutely. And so
Okay.
what we're recommending is, as they become damaged or unusable, to break them up, put them actually in a new recycle bin. And so we're replacing them based on needs and requests. Absolutely.
Okay, thank you very much.
You're most welcome.
Okay. No other hands are raised right now. Any more questions? Please raise your hand. Use the icon at the bottom of the Zoom screen, the yellow hand.
Okay, let's circle back to Alex then.
Okay, Alex, unmuted. Go ahead.
Hi, welcome back, Alex. Oh, you're still muted, Alex. You have to unmute yourself again.
Yeah.
This
There you
is
go.
off the topic of, I need to know who to bug about this, whether it's one of you two. These lovely new bus stops that were put in the city of Troy. It kind of has to do with solid waste. They gather a lot of solid waste. Like
Yeah,
tons of it every week.
It is and it's not us. So really what it is CDTA, and we service our street cans, but they are responsible for their own servicing of their cans.
No,
If
what I'm
you
talking
would,
about,
you mean garbage like around the,
the way the cutout of the bus stop is,
yeah,
I live at 109 Second Ave.
okay.
One of these lovely new bus stops that took up parking spot. Thank you. That right there's a gutter right there. There's a
Oh, I see what you're
gutter
saying.
hole. Every week I go out and fill up about 1/4 of one of my garbage cans filled with sometimes leaves, mostly cigarette butts, some cans, some bottles, some lovely face masks, and your variety of litter that comes through the city of Troy. I mean, and the CDTA says they're responsible for the bus stop. When the street cleaning does come through, our street cleaners do not and are not a bit able to clean that.
If you would be so kind as,
that is a lot of solid waste.
I don't disagree. If you can include that in the email, I'll find out who really addresses it because it's probably either streets or public utilities. However, that doesn't answer the other question, which is about it filling up your container. So that's a conversation that we have started to have already. And if you are actively doing cleanup in your neighborhood, we are going to have a program by which you'd be able to pick up additional bags and have some sort of a voucher for that. We've had that conversation on a couple of the other calls and want to make sure that for people doing the right things that we're not disincentivizing that. So that input again is very valuable to us in knowing how to design the program and what the limitations or restrictions are of what does that look like and how do we include that without including free bags for people that just want an extra bag for their home. So that's where we're working on the design, but we certainly want to make adjustments for people that are doing the right thing and doing the pickup like you are.
Yeah, because I mean, it gets disgusting because not only the bus stop people smoke, there's a halfway house on the other side of me. And they're not supposed to smoke anywhere near the house, but they do. So it's literally just filled with cigarette butts that came out of somebody else's mouth.
Yep. I get what
Luckily,
you're saying.
Luckily, I'm not scared of germs, you know?
So what I would suggest, include that in the email, even about the cigarette butt issue. And maybe that's something that our planning department can talk about with CDTA. So as they're doing the planning for the shelters, that maybe they can require CDTA. I don't know the zoning and the code requirements. I don't know the planning aspect of that, but I can certainly direct questions to them so that you can speak to them about that, because I think it's an excellent idea if we're able to adjust the ordinances to have it addressed. But I just don't know the pathway to get it there, but I can certainly connect you to the right folks so that maybe we can get some traction with that, because it sounds like a great idea.
Contact for, I gotta write, I'll forget in 2 hours when I come back home to what
I gotcha.
contact.
I gotcha.
for-
So
I
for
need the
the
contact for the. litter
planning
control.
department and the code department about how do we require CDTA to include a cigarette butt receptacle thing. That's the technical term, of course,
Yeah.
at their bus pickups.
Yeah, I mean, because listen, it's a tough thing, because I
Yep.
have a woman's halfway house on the right-hand side of me. Legally,
gotcha.
by Oasis rules, they are not supposed to be smoking 20 feet from that building. They do nothing since that bus stop has come in. They do nothing but sit there, smoke. I've called Oasis. Oasis did nothing but call the director, which I already know. Or the person that's in charge of the house. I mean, it's filled with cigarettes. I asked her, I said, why don't you make them go out once a week and clean? And that way they'll stop throwing cigarette butts on the street. You know,
Yeah, I don't have an answer for you on that, but if you put that in the email,
it's
I'm
just,
happy to address it
like I
as
said
best as I
before,
can.
as a property owner, and you can understand because you're a
Yep.
landlord,
Yep.
it's getting very frustrating.
Yep.
with every single little thing. You
Yep.
know, it's just, especially in the past year, it's just compiling.
Yep.
No.
No, I get it. I don't disagree or dispute, and we'll
I've
do the
been
best
livid
we
since
can. So if you email me, I will do my best to connect you with the right folks.
I mean, I've been livid since they let CDTA just out of nowhere take up parking spot in front of my house. You know, I mean, it was.
I get it. I get it. I understand. So again, the things that I have the capacity to do something about, I certainly will. And what I can't, I will try and refer you to the right folks.
Thank you. Thank you for your patience.
Most welcome. No problem at all. So any of our other attendees have additional questions? Love to be able to answer them for you.
I think Pat is up again. Pat, I've unmuted you.
My question is the garbage fee going to disappear, or are we still going to have the garbage fee and have to buy the garbage bags as we go forward?
That's a good question. Part of it is we are hoping to create what's called a hybrid fee, so that the garbage fee or the sanitation or solid waste fee would be lower, and that the bag fee would be part of it. So it would be equalized. So the goal is to not have any increases and to hopefully over time have decreases. And so depending on how it's actually designed, which is what we're working on now, will depend on what that fee structure looks like that we present to council. So there are any number of models that are used across the country. There are some where the bag fee is exceptionally high and there's no solid waste fee. There are some that the solid waste fee includes X number of bags, and that's a higher fee. And there's some that are hybridized, which means a slightly or somewhat lower fee, and then the bags as part of an addition to that. So it brings it to around or just under what the current fee looks like. Does that answer your question?
Yes.
And so that part of it, Pat, is what we're working on right now. How does that look? What does it include? What does it not include? And what's that fee going to be? And so our intention is when we go back to council after it's been reviewed by the Solid Waste Advisory Board, after we've completed all of these meetings, is to have an informed answer so that when council asks us, you know, where did you come up with this fee, that we're going to be able to determine that based on what is best specific to the city of Troy. Thanks.
Okay, I currently see no other hands raised. Please raise your hand and ask your question.
So Rob, I think what we'll do is a last call. Any
Yep.
last calls for questions from anybody? Happy to answer them for you. Otherwise, you're more than welcome to either call or email me. And I'm usually within a 24-hour or less response time. Occasionally, it goes a little bit longer than that, depending on my day. But I'll do my best to get back to you with any responses or answers. Any other questions from anyone? Going once, going twice. Thanks for joining us today, and we will have one more community meeting coming up next Monday evening. So if you come up with any questions in the meantime and would rather ask them on Zoom than by email or by phone, please feel free to join us again. Thanks.
Thank you all. Thanks, Renee. Bye-bye.
Thanks, Rob.